Hello, my name is Payman Aramju, and today I'm going to be talking to you about common types of personal injury cases. Every month we put out an article to try to help people who are considering hiring counsel make the right decision and an informed decision. This month, what we decided to do is just write an article on what are some common types of personal injury cases. Because oftentimes when people hear the word personal injury, it's really an umbrella term and they're not quite sure what that term means. More often than not, I've been telling people that we make the community safer by compensating the seriously injured. Because at the heart, that's really what this is about, is taking a situation where someone's been injured and ensuring that the wrongdoer pays what they should pay to fully compensate the person who's been injured. So I'm just going to go through some of these common personal injury cases, talk about some things that might be specific for those types of cases, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be a little more informed than before watching it. The most common type of case are motor vehicle accidents. In fact, more often than not, we get calls for motor vehicle accidents more often than any other case. And a motor vehicle accident case is exactly what it sounds like. It's a case in which you're operating a motor vehicle and somebody does something that causes the accident. The unique thing about motor vehicle accidents is that there's so much data that exists in the world that can help us determine who did what when. What most people don't know is that every motor vehicle manufactured after about 2012 contains what's called crash data. And depending on the speed and the manner of the accident, there may be crash data. And it's amazing how much data can exist on the crash data. You may have speed, you may have the amount of brakes and whether the brakes were being used, whether the accelerator was being pressed and how far, what steering degree angle and how far. It can be so enlightening to understand what the inputs of the driver were just prior to the accident. But there's also other data that's very important in motor vehicle accidents to get right away, such as street cam footage, body cam footage, and any other recordings from surrounding businesses that may have caught the accident. Usually when we get a call for a motor vehicle accident, it's time to get to work. We want to make sure that we limit communication between our client and the insurance company, even if the insurance company is our client's own insurance company. Because what you'll find out is that every single call that you have with an insurance company is recorded. And something as simple as saying, "I feel fine," when you might not be meaning anything more than just simply, "I'm doing fine," like we all tell each other when we walk around each and every day, can be interpreted as, "You're not that injured." So it's critical to try to cut off the communication right away to protect our client from saying something that, although it's not a criminal matter, for most cases we handle, they're civil, can still nonetheless be used against them in a way that can be harmful in the future. For motor vehicle accidents, for most of them, the time frame that we're looking at is 5 years for when you can bring the action. There are some exceptions to that, such as actions involving a city in which notice has to be given pretty soon. And so motor vehicle accidents are, as well as all personal injury accidents, are pretty urgent to get to work to make sure evidence is preserved and that we're gathering the necessary information so we can fully advocate for the clients we represent. So next on our list is truck accidents. And why truck accidents are separate from motor vehicle accidents is because there are so many regulations that exist for truck drivers that don't exist for you and I driving our normal car each and every day. And so truck accidents, they have a lot of information as well that needs to be gathered right away, as well as traditional normal vehicles that you and I would drive. Trucks also have crash data. It's typically not as great as the vehicles that you'd see you and I driving, but it still nonetheless is incredible data to preserve right away. Also for truck accidents, if a truck crosses state lines in its normal business, they're going to have incredible insurance coverage relative to the state minimum coverage that most drivers on the road have. Also with truck accidents, unfortunately, due to the size and weight, it can have catastrophic results in the accidents, involving oftentimes several vehicles whenever the accident takes place. Whenever there's a truck accident that we're involved in, just like a motor vehicle accident, it's important for us to get letters of representation out right away to make sure that everybody knows that our office is representing the specific individual and to limit the communication that they have with our client. But also, it's just as critical that we send these letters of spoliation so that everybody knows they need to preserve the evidence. What's unique about truck accidents is not uncommon for them to have cameras capturing every single thing that the driver of the truck is doing. And when we have that information, we can say they were doing something like not paying attention. That can be incredibly helpful in representing our clients. But also, truck drivers have regulations regarding how much they can drive in a certain time period. And knowing whether or not that they've complied with those rules can be really helpful in representing our clients. Another type of case is a motorcycle accident. And motorcycle accidents, unfortunately, are near and dear to my heart because of some personal situations I've been through. And the reason motorcycle accidents are so critical to get involved in as soon as we can is because the same thing with motor vehicle accidents. There is data, not typically on the motorcycle that's all that helpful, but on the car who hit the motorcycle or was involved in the accident with the motorcycle. Unfortunately for motorcycles, there is far too little protection surrounding the rider, which means, like truck accidents, these injuries can oftentimes be catastrophic and life-altering. It's so important for us right away to make sure that we get out to the scene, to make sure that we can have our crash reconstructionist, our accident investigators out at the scene measuring skid marks and making sure that we're accounting for all the data and information necessary to fully represent and investigate the matter. What's unreasonable and unreasonable in the sense that how quick it happens is all the information regarding the accident goes away in a matter of weeks. What you'll have is skid marks that would indicate how far the motorcycle may have had to slam on its brakes before impacting a car, or how far its back tire was sliding before it came to a stop. And in a short amount of time, all of that goes away, whether it be because of rain or other cars driving in the area. And so it's so important for us to get out to those accident scenes, especially because the limited information that motorcycles have on them, to make sure that we fully get the information to advocate for our client and be able to tell the story the later we need to when representing our clients. Another type of accident, and I even sort of cringe at saying it, is categorically what we call slip and fall accidents. And the reason that I say I cringe in saying it is because there is a societal feel about it. And it's something that we recognize we have to combat anytime that we sign a case in which somebody was injured in an establishment, and we know society may look at the case as a slip and fall, a case in which someone's trying to profit over somebody else. But here's the reality of it. Oftentimes, there are establishments, grocery stores, retailers that don't do what they should do to protect the people that they invite into the store to make a profit from their business. And when they don't do what they're supposed to do and it results in injuries to the people they invited onto their premises, they're responsible for it. And there's all sorts of reasons that may cause someone to have liability for a premise liability case. They may have failed to clean up the area that they had been aware of a spill taking place. They may have cleaned an area and failed to mark off the area or barricade the area so people couldn't walk in the area. So slip and fall cases are unique cases in that we know right off the bat we have the societal image of what the case means. Because these cases happen in businesses, it's critical for us to send preservation letters right away to the business. Those video footage of the accident or incident can be incredibly impactful. When you see somebody who's fallen and really been injured, and you can see just the whole mannerisms and the way that they're behaving shows they're in such gross pain. That's really impactful to people who are ultimately deciding the issues in these cases. But it's also important to send those preservation letters because if an establishment fails to preserve evidence, it's possible that a jury can be instructed that they let the evidence go away because it wasn't helpful to them, or the evidence would have been damning to them. And so premise liability or slip and fall cases are cases that have its own set of difficulties, but nonetheless, cases that we routinely handle at our office and are aware of how to combat some of these issues that I've spoken about. Medical malpractice cases, I'll tell you, there is a ton of protection for doctors in the state of Missouri for their medical malpractice cases. We normally, in a normal negligence case, would see a 5-year statute of limitations, meaning that from the date of an injury taking place, you have 5 years to file that case if necessary. Medical malpractice cases are so short. 2 years in the state of Missouri, you have to file that case if you want to proceed in the courts against the person who harmed you. Another unique thing about medical malpractice cases is that doctors have protection to which another doctor has to sign an affidavit of merit. They have to say, we think the doctor you're suing has fallen below the standard of care, and because they're falling beneath the standard of care, you can proceed. We think you have a good faith basis to do so ultimately. Medical malpractice cases involve a ton of records. They involve a ton of experts. And unfortunately, because that statute of limitations being 2 years, it is critical as soon as we believe that we may have a cause of action to get the records, to get experts to review the matter right away, to come to a conclusion as to whether or not we can in fact pursue the cause of action. There are thankfully some exceptions to this 2-year statute of limitations, but preferably we're not having to defend or argue our statute of limitations because we timely filed it within those 2 years. There are workplace accidents, and this is sometimes enlightening to many people. Oftentimes people have heard about workers' compensation, and that's specifically the protection that employees have, that if they're injured on the job, they will receive not only treatment, but compensation for the injuries they suffered. And there was sort of a great exchange at some point in which employers had the benefit of not being sued by negligence for their employees, and employees gave up the ability to sue for negligence with the benefit of not having to prove negligence. They had the workers' comp benefits. And because of that, we have cases that we represent people in workers' comp injuries. But that doesn't mean that may be your only remedy. Imagine a fact pattern in which you are a delivery driver. And as you're delivering whatever it is you deliver to the businesses you're delivering to, there's somebody that isn't paying attention and runs into you. When we have a situation like that, we have options. We could pursue a cause of action against the person who hit you, and we could also pursue a cause of action on the workers' comp side of things. And there's strategy as to why you do one or both of those paths, but knowing that at least there is an option if you're injured at work for multiple avenues of recovery is helpful. All too often we learn that people had been injured at work, they had received the treatment at work, but they had never filed a claim for compensation on the workers' compensation side. And it's unfortunate because there's a relatively short statute of limitations for workers' compensation. So if you don't bring the case timely, then you can lose the ability to bring the case. For both medical malpractice and workers' compensation, as well as many of these accidents, medical treatment is critical. But what's unique about workers' compensation is that you've got to see the doctors that they suggest you need to see. There's some exceptions to that, such as when they deny that the injury happened at work. But for the most part, you're going to see the doctors that your workers' compensation insurance sends you to, which for most accounts from the clients we've helped aren't terribly satisfied with. And that can be a common frustration. And it's oftentimes one of the most common things that we're working through on a workers' compensation case is making sure that our clients get the treatment that they deserve on the matter. There are also what's called products liability cases. And a products liability case is essentially where a company has manufactured some item, and the item, when it's commonly used as its intended use, has some sort of flaw, and that flaw results in injury. The old story of the slinky is kind of the easy fact pattern to think of. It was, as the story went, not terribly uncommon for young children to have their slinky get stuck in a rug or tangled up in something, and as they pulled the slinky out of the rug or the carpet, it would snap back at them. And unfortunately, there's children that were cut, and some children actually got their eyes sight lost by the Slinky. And those were products liability cases. But there's also products liability cases for child care products. There's products liability cases for auto accidents. If you think of a product that's manufactured for a company and it's being used as intended, and it results in harm to the consumer in a way that shouldn't have, you're really thinking about a products liability case. And what's unique about products liability cases is that oftentimes there's a lot of science and engineering that goes into figuring out how and what should have been done in order to prevent the harm to have happened in the first place. They can be extremely fascinating and fun cases to work on, but they're also extremely costly to work on. Dog bites and animal attacks. Missouri is unique. I should say Missouri has a benefit, maybe not unique in this respect, in that many states have laws similar to Missouri in that if you're attacked by a dog, you have a strict liability statute, which means that the mere fact you got attacked is evidence enough that there's liability on behalf of the dog owner. The reason that that's unique is because in, let's say, an auto accident case, for instance, the plaintiff, the person bringing the cause of action, bears the burden. They have to show that the other driver fell below the duty that's been imposed on them, and as a result, injury was caused. And a dog bite case is different in that the mere fact that you were bit by a dog is often evidence enough, so long as there was damages that were suffered, that you can then pursue the action. Unfortunately for dog bite cases, one of the difficulties can be insurance. It's not too uncommon, I should say, for us to be able to recover on somebody's homeowner's insurance. But it also has been the case where you have somebody who's renting an apartment, and while they should have renter's insurance, they just fail to have it. Their dog gets out, or you go into their apartment and the dog attacks you. In those situations, it can be difficult because there may not be assets to collect against. But nonetheless, they are cases that have a lot of legal strength because of this strict liability notion, which I'm sure we'll talk about in videos in the future. Wrongful death cases. These are cases in which the negligence of somebody caused the death of another. There's a reduced statute of limitations for these wrongful death cases. And as far as the emotions, they can be some of the most difficult cases to take on because families have lost a loved one, and oftentimes they're seeing us right after that took place. One of the things that is critical in a wrongful death case is to tactfully handle the conversations, to take the time with the family and make sure that they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Their wrongful death case can fall into many categories. They can involve an auto accident, a premise liability, a medical malpractice case. They can involve any different area of law. And they are difficult cases because, unfortunately, in a traditional auto accident where death hasn't occurred, everybody can, presuming they're competent, testify to what they experienced, what they saw and heard. Unfortunately, in a wrongful death case, because the person has passed, their perspective is lost in that as well. And that means that the data is that much more critical to get, whether it be records, video footage, business video footage, police reports. All of the information that we gathered is critical to tell the story that now can't be told. Today, we've talked about several different causes of actions, and I think the point of this video is that there are a lot of different ways that people can get injured, and there's a lot of different ways that we can pursue recovery for individuals. We've just gone through some causes of action, some areas of law, but there's many others. And I'll say one of the worst things that happens is people will call us years after an incident takes place, and they'll want to know, is there anything I can do? The worst thing I like telling somebody is no. It's been too late. Too much time has passed, and had you called us sooner, we probably could have done something for you. The truth is this: we don't charge to talk to you for a consultation. It's free. And as you see for many law firms, if we're not successfully collecting for you, then you don't pay anything. So my request to anybody who's watching this video is this: recognize that if you're injured, you're probably in a tough spot. You may not know what your options are. You may not know what to do next. But one thing that you can do for no cost to you, and hopefully some way to ease your mind about your options you have, is to just call us. Talk to us. Take the time to ask the questions you have, and we'll take the time to give you the best answers we can with the information that you have. because that'll at least give you the option to know what your options are without waiting and finding out it's too late and not being able to do anything at all. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to y'all next time.